Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Hi, awesome people. Welcome to the Rise to Lead podcast. I'm thrilled to introduce you to yet another amazing guest today, Clifford Starks.
Hey, amazing people. Looking forward to being on the podcast. Regina, thank you for having me.
Well, Clifford, welcome to my show. It's so great to have you on, and welcome to everyone else who's listening, of course. Now, Clifford, I'm going to just quickly introduce you to our audience so that people know who you are if they don't know you yet. So if that's okay with you, I'm just going to read your bio real quick.
Awesome.
Okay. Clifford Starks, transformational coach at Starks Enterprises. Clifford Starks, transformational coach at Starks Enterprises, is a former UFC fighter and Hall of Famer. Now coaches top entrepreneurs and leaders. With mastery of fundamentals, he helps you turn pressure into fuel, unlocking your inner badass to achieve your deepest dreams. Clifford believes the right questions and statements can unlock new levels of transformation, allowing leaders to show up as their greatest version of self consistently, not just once in a while, but consistently. I love that. And yes, we always try to bring in a little humor, so I hope you don't I hope that was okay with you.
I'm good. Yeah, I say take what you do seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. I like
Exactly.
having fun on the journey.
All right. Okay. So let's dive right in. Clifford, I'm so curious because I just met you a few weeks ago through a networking group on Facebook, actually, that we're both a part of. And I don't know too much about you apart from what I've seen there, right? So
Yeah.
tell us more about your path to becoming a transformational coach and to a transformational coach actually to top entrepreneurs and leaders. What inspired you to do that?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in challenging myself, seeing who I could become, seeing how I could become that thing. And my first big challenge was actually being an overweight kid. So I was overweight. I ended up losing the weight, got into personal training and supported people in their journey. And then I upped the ante. I always am looking to up the ante. So I'm like, you know what? If I'm training people and I'm a pretty good athlete, let me get into fighting and see how I can do there. And so I ended up making it into the UFC in less than a year with my coach. And he didn't think it was going to be possible, but we ended up pulling that one off. And once I got out of the UFC and got out of Bellator and fighting in MMA, I got into entrepreneurship. And I quickly realized it's actually a lot harder than I thought that it was going to be. And strangely enough, everything that I get into is actually harder than I thought it was going to be. You know, when you're looking at it, it doesn't look so bad. Like, oh, that's pretty easy. Let me give that a try. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, crap, that's way harder than I thought it was going to be. And so I make it a priority for me to support people as they're going through their journey and going through their process, going through their growth, essentially. And it drives me because I've had coaches go help me through my growth. I've had consultants help me through my growth, and I want to help others through their growth as they go through their process.
Okay, that's really beautiful. Yes, and I think we all have our stories of why we, want to help others as transformational coaches specifically. Also, I'm also a transformational leadership coach. which is very similar to what you do, except that we all do it in our own way, in our unique way. And that's the beauty of also talking to other coaches, because everyone is so different. Yeah, and it's beautiful that we have different coaches with different backgrounds so that we can serve different people, because who might come to you or want to talk to you might not be the same person that wants to work with me. Or maybe sometimes they might coincide and then they can do both as well. But but
Yep.
most of the time, we just have a conversation and then figure out who is the best coach for us as a client, right? Yes. So it's great that you had that support also from, it seems like from young on.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you?
So it was interesting because as I go through my journey, I say there's support systems, and then there's non-support systems that you can
Mhm.
make support systems. Because the truth is, it's all in our head anyway.
Yeah.
And as I went through my journey, I had a very supportive mom throughout my entire journey. My biological dad actually drove out of my life at 4, and my
Oh.
mom remarried when I was 6. And this is to the guy I call dad to this day. Um, and I was in a school where I was I was I was different at the time. I was
Mhm.
the only black kid there, and as a child, you want to fit in. You want to fit in, and it was kind of hard to fit in when you look different than everybody else. Um, but it was great for my learning, and it was great for my leadership. I didn't know it at the time, but it allowed me to stand for what I stand for and do what I do. And then I realized, like, we're all doing the best that we can. Everybody's doing the best that they can with the tools and the resources that they have. And when you start getting innovative and when you start thinking a certain way, you start seeing opportunities everywhere, because they really are everywhere if you see it.
Right, right. Yes, so I can relate to being the only person that looks different, though not at school. That didn't happen to me because I grew up in a rural area in Bavaria, and there at the time, now there's a lot of, diversity, but back then there were some people from Yugoslavia and some people in the neighboring town. There were more Greek people and also Turkish people, but that was about it. And Italians, okay, that because of the proximity as well. And and I remember that we had one black friend who was actually, by the way, always the king of the universe there. He was very good looking, was very
Yeah.
handsome, and everybody wanted to be his girlfriend. But that was a little later in my teens, and but much later, because of my interest in dancing, I oftentimes, just a few years ago, not long ago, I oftentimes was the only white person at Haitian dance events.
Yeah.
So just as a side, it's definitely a different situation,
Mhm.
but it can also be very interesting. So I can relate in that sense, although it's a completely different situation. I realize that, of course. You know what I think it does? It allows us actually to stand out more automatically, and that can be, of course, a little bit feel like we're put on the spot, but also can give us special spotlight. So as you said before, it depends on how you use it, right? Because it's in your head, as you said. And and uh and I think that's also the beauty of it. So I've often been in similar situations because I've traveled a lot and lived in other places.
Mm.
So yeah, I can definitely relate, even if that was not the case for me as
Yeah.
a young kid, you know. And everybody's situation is, of course, completely different.
Well,
Now,
I appreciate you sharing it with me. Yeah.
yes. And if you have any comments, feel free.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I look at, because in life I say we can be different, but we can also be more similar. And it's
Mhm.
figuring out, like, being able to share our stories with one another and see the differences in our stories and also see the similarities in our stories and say, oh man, people who wanted to be something, do something, become something. We had a dream, we had a vision, and were we able to make it a reality? And if we didn't, we still can. We still have time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's never too late. I just
Yes.
wrote a poem for my new book, Living My Freaking Amazing Life, where it's all about inspiring people to create the life that's perfect for them, not a perfect life, but a life that's perfect for them anywhere in the world. And at the beginning and at the end, I wrote a poem, and it says pretty much exactly what you said. Like, it's not too late. You can do it
I
at
love
any
that.
age. I also just last year, I'm 60, so last year started Senegalese sabar dancing. Why not, right? Start something new all
Nice.
the
Very
time.
cool.
It's a
Yeah.
very energetic dance. Yeah. So, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And um, everything starts in the head, as you said, or rather in our mind, right? And we that's where we weave our dreams so that then they can become visions. And from there, we can make these visions a physical reality and then, put in our goals and all that stuff. We're going to talk more about that in just a bit.
Yeah.
Now, what does heart-centered leadership look like to you? This podcast is about bold, heart-centered leadership. So I often ask my guests, what does it mean to you? How would you define it?
It's such a powerful thing because it starts like in a real general state of loving people,
Hmm.
taking the time to love people. And then when you start going into the nuances, it's, well, how do you love them? How do you speak to them? How do you listen to them? How do you actually acknowledge them? And how do you take actions that show that you're acknowledging them? Because you can listen and hear something and not do anything at all. You could even repeat back exactly what they said, but if nothing shifts and nothing changes, well, did you really listen to them? And so it's getting all of those pieces in place and saying, like, not only do I hear you and acknowledge you and I'm communicating with you, but I want to support you. And this is how I show how I'm going to support you, by the actions that I take.
Yes, absolutely. And even while listening with your entire body, with your
Mm-hmm.
mind and your body, with your ears, not just your ears, but also your gesture. You're maybe leaning in or whatever that looks like for everybody. And when
Mm-hmm.
we do that and when we're truly present, that's also when it becomes easier to take the action that actually serves the other person. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and you also said something earlier that I really love, looking for the similarities, although we are different, because one thing we have all in common is that we are all unique.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have something in common, and we're all unique at the same time, right? Yes, and I think that's the beauty of it, because if wouldn't that be a boring world if we were all the same? Like we all looked the same and said the same things, right? What a boring world. It would never expand. It
Yeah.
couldn't expand. It would always stay uh, the same and stagnate. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So you told us you love to support your leader clients and your entrepreneurial clients, who are, of course, also leaders, so they can turn their big, audacious dream into a reality. So let's talk about leading with vision. I think we
Yeah.
agree that you need to have a solid, powerful vision first, so that then you can lead with that vision, right? So what's your
Yeah.
unique take on this?
Yeah. Like, the first thing that popped into my head is Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he pops into my head, he said, I have a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I have a dream. I think everything starts with a dream. Dreaming so big that the rest of the world is like, how are you going to make this like, how? How's this going to become a reality? And sometimes we don't know. We don't. But we start with the dream
Mm-hmm.
and be audacious with that dream. Dream big as you can. And from the dream comes the vision. And the vision is like, okay, what principles are we going to follow? How are we going to stay consistent? What's our strategy? What tactics are we going to use? How are we going to get from A to B? And that's that vision piece, like getting the game plan, measuring things out, putting things in place, and knowing that it's not always going to go to plan, like knowing that there's going to be adjustments that need to be made. There's going to be certain things that need to be made, but as long as we're measuring, we know if we're getting closer or further away, and then we can adjust and test and optimize from that aspect. And then from there, um, the visionary keeps the vision alive too. Because if you just have a vision for one day and you're like, are we still doing this thing? Like, completely forgot about that. So keeping it alive so that everybody else can know that there's purpose in what they're
Mhm.
doing. And when
Mhm.
they have that purpose, then that vision becomes a reality where they go like, holy crap, it's here. We made it. We created this thing. It started with nothing and then it turned into something.
Yes, totally. So you mentioned Martin Luther King and his dream, the famous quote, I have a dream. And you know what's sad? What I find sad is that in school, most of us are educated out of our dreams. We're not allowed to daydream. You know, everybody said, "Oh no, you cannot dream.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to studying. Don't look out the window." All these phrases that we hear as young kids that
Mm-hmm.
then, so to speak, kill our dreams, right? And we are told to not dream, but to rather just repeat what we are told to repeat. And I personally believe that this is very damaging. I have written a lot about the school system and I have a very strong opinion about it. So we're not going to go into all those details, but this is
Yeah.
really, really important that we give ourselves permission to dream again. Because I have so often heard dreams don't come true, plans come true. But there is no
Mm-hmm.
plan without a dream. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it starts with the dream and then the dream becomes a plan. And then it's interesting because I just am throwing this out there right now, but a plan becomes a promise. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking at something and you say, "Oh, well now I can act on this thing." And we not might not know exactly how that action's going to look, but at least we can act on something. That's the beauty of having a plan. But yeah, start with the dream because the dream allows you to go after what you want, as you were talking about. Like what does the person want to go after? And whatever that person wants to go after, it doesn't even exist yet. It can't, because if it did, it wouldn't be a dream.
Right. So you
So
just
start with
touched on,
that.
yeah, you touched on something here. It's about that strong desire and
Yeah,
that passion that we really need to stay consistent. We said the word consistent earlier, right? And you said to keep it alive. I love that because if we don't have that passion, then as soon as the going gets tough, the tough will
yeah,
no longer get going. They
yeah,
just will give
yeah.
up, right? And they're not so tough
Mhm.
anymore. So we really need to keep that dream alive. And that's also why, in my opinion, it is so, so important if we have a team to also have a team vision.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
actually,
100%.
yeah, so what's your experience with team visions?
I learned such a powerful lesson because my goal was to influence 1 billion people.
Mhm.
And I tend to go after like really audacious things right away.
Yes,
And
right.
then the lessons start coming, right? Then the lessons start coming. And I really like in my head, I thought, oh, I'm gonna get to this 1 billion people by myself. Yeah, I'm gonna get there. And as I started going through it, I'm like, there's no way I can get there by myself. Like, and I'm looking at it like, wow, that was a big number that I came up with. Like, holy crap, why that number? Okay, Cliff.
Uh-huh.
And the lessons start coming in. Well, one of the lessons that I saw, Einstein talks about the power of compound. He says compounding uh, exponentially, it's the eighth wonder of the world. And so I started looking at it and I realized, like, holy crap, one plus one does not equal two. It doesn't. It's exponential, especially if the one plus one is powerful enough. So, for instance, me and you, we are one and one right now, but we're speaking to an audience and we
Hmm.
want to serve the audience and support the audience. And by the way, thank you everyone who is listening. I appreciate that. But I start looking at it and going like, oh wow, one plus one isn't two. It can actually be 11.
Hmm.
And then I go, since everything becomes exponential, you just got to be really intentional with the individuals that you're bringing into your life so that you can have exponential reach as you go through the process. And so to me, the team is the most valuable thing. And it was a lesson that in the back of my head, I knew it because I had done team sports as
Hmm.
well. But now that I'm the leader, and leadership is about having courage. And the courage to me, courage is, it can mean so many different things. Like I have the courage to, if I screw up, I just tell people I screwed up and this is how I'm going to make it right. This is how I'm going to make it better. You don't just say I screwed up and so you guys just accept it. Like that's not very good leadership. So, but as I've been going through it, I'm like, oh, I've been developing some of these muscles and I didn't even know I was developing because I'm like, we're all human and we're all in this together. We're supporting each other together. And so I have good leadership, not because I say I have good leadership, it's my people who have to say I have good leadership. And that's when I started understanding, like, oh my goodness, like there's something to this. Like when you do right by people, when you do right by yourself, when you stand for something, when you can articulate yourself, when you can communicate where you're going and what you're doing, people get excited about
Yes. Communication, clear communication of a clear vision.
it. Yes.
Clarity is so critical in everything. And I believe that when we have a team vision, what also really glues the team together in the pursuit of that vision is when they have a say in the and writing the vision and determining the vision. So it's not just one person, one leader who has created the vision. There might be one person who had the initial dream. That's totally, that happens a lot. But then as we look more into, okay, what does this vision exactly look like also for how we work together, for how we put our goals into it, our milestones, and what it all looks like, right? So
Yep.
it's so much more effective sometimes when we include our team in the exact specifications of that vision so that we get buy-in from our team so
Yeah.
that
I
Mhm,
love Arthur and the round table.
mhm,
I love that concept.
mhm.
And part of my process is I'm a leader and so are they. We're all leaders together. And now we're all pushing towards the same mission and vision, but we're all in this together. It's not, well, I get to say this and I get to say that. And you go back to heart-centered leadership.
Mhm.
And to me, like, no, someone has to make a final say. Do they? Or have we been conditioned to believe that's the truth? Because I think we all have similar visions when it really comes down to it. Like you might have a goal where you're like, well, Cliff, I want to be able to, and I would just ask you, what do you want to do in your life? What do you want to
Oh,
create? I'm just
yeah.
asking a question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I want to take this podcast, for example, to high level. So just like you have that very specific number of 1 billion, I don't have a super specific number in my mind right now, but I know that I want it to be heard in many parts of the world.
nice.
And so just this is just one of the goals, of course. I mean, there are many, many more in my bigger vision.
Yeah, and I love that. So you want your podcast to go to a high level.
Hmm.
I want to support 1 billion people. We're
Hmm.
actually going in the same direction.
Hmm.
And so we go into like, well, there can only be one leader and there can only be one thing and there can only, and it's like, that's because our minds believe that.
Right.
When our minds believe something different, then it goes into something different. And so we're both supporting our dreams in this moment. And that's
Right.
what people can do on a regular basis.
Yes. And as we are recording this podcast, you're going to share it. I'm going to share it. So
Yes.
different audiences will come together. They
Yes.
will join to somewhere. There's going to be this intersection, which will make it again bigger. So it's no longer 1 + 1 is 2, as you said earlier. This is so
Absolutely.
important to recognize and to remember, right? Yes, absolutely. So, when you work with your clients, Clifford, what would be a typical like client that you work with, and what would be a typical success story?
So mine are type A personalities. They're high
Hmm.
achievers. They're going after what they're going after,
Hmm.
and they're going to find a way to make it happen. That's who they are.
Okay.
Um, my success stories, I help them just have fun while they're doing it. I help them because they're going to learn the lesson. That's who they are. It's in their nature.
Hmm.
But we get to have fun as well as we're going through the process. And we get to do it easier with more flow and more
Right.
passion in what we're doing.
Absolutely. I like to say, for example, for my clients, I want to support you so that you can become a thriving leader, not just somebody who might want to get a promotion or, if you're in corporate or a higher salary or whatnot. That's not all there is. If you're totally stressed out, you cannot even enjoy that part, right? So it's all about really getting into that flow, being able to manage stressful situations because we're all going to experience them, but also keeping that stress level at a lower level more consistently. Here's the word again, right? Consistently. And it takes practice, but it also takes some tools and takes some knowledge. And if we don't, sometimes we even have it, but we just don't do it, right? And so what that then helps us is to feel better. And that in the end leads to that state of being a thriving leader rather than just a leader, rather than just what we sometimes call successful, which in my eyes isn't necessarily success as I define it, right? So you mentioned fun, and I love it. I have this saying actually that says, "No fun, no gain." Instead of
Yeah,
"no pain, no gain," I like to say "no fun, no gain,"
I
and
love that. I
really
love that.
recondition our minds, right? Because we're so
Mm-hmm.
conditioned into thinking that we have to always work hard, that everything has to be hard. And
Yep.
that's another thing that we have that is so ingrained in our programming, and it's time to get rid of that.
Yeah.
I was going to say
Yeah.
to get rid of that shit, but because it's really like something. Why does it have to be hard always? No, well, we know that sometimes we have to put in some extra hours and all of that. There's nothing to say against that. However, it should be fun. It also shouldn't be permanent. And yeah, let's take our workbooks and transform them into playbooks, for example.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like that you mentioned this. Um, yeah. And then can you tell me of such an example of somebody who can you share an example maybe of somebody who did that successfully and
Yeah. Yeah.
what the
So
benefits were?
I had one of my clients, I had her speak on a stage for us,
Hmm.
and then all she did was talk about how amazing I was. It was very interesting. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you not talking about yourself? And what I saw was, oh wow, we actually go the hard route because we don't communicate our value to other people. We actually want to pump other people up. We're really good at doing that. Heart-centered people can be very, very good at doing that. So
Hmm.
you can be a great giver, but a terrible receiver. And if you're a great giver and a terrible receiver, you'll get there because you're going to keep doing what you need to do until you get there. But life has flow, and it's figuring out, well, what is flow to you? Being very intentional with that flow. So I help people get really intentional, and then I say, are you doing it in the best way possible that you could? And oftentimes they're doing it in the way they know how, not in the best way that they could, because if they knew the best way, then they would just do it right away. But we do have program, and we know what we know until we know something different. And so I shifted the way she shows up, the way she communicates, the way she does things, and realized, holy crap, it's actually easy when I'm talking to the right people and I actually talk about myself. Because it's important to talk about yourself. If you have a way that you can serve people, it's important to serve them and let them know that you can serve.
Right. And yeah, yeah, and oftentimes it's just really about making it relevant to them, right?
Yeah.
So that it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my book, for example, it's not just about my life. Yes, it is about living my freaking amazing life,
Yeah.
but the more critical and important part of it are the lessons that I have learned and that I'm sharing with the readers so that they can actually get the benefit from me living through some challenges. And that's why I put those lessons at the end of each chapter also. There's just an example, right? But it's with everything. When you position yourself as your client, as you've helped your client to do, then we want to make it relevant to who we're talking to. And that then oftentimes also helps us to actually talk about ourselves, as you said, or talk about the service we want to provide, oftentimes rather. Is there anything else you would like to talk about in this context of vision and the importance of a strong vision and how you guide your clients to implementing it?
What we speak has unbelievable power.
Mhm.
And so it's important to be very intentional with the words that we use. And it's also
Absolutely.
very important to be intentional with the actions that we take. Because if we speak something and then we don't act on it, it messes with our head to say, you're gonna screw this up too. You're gonna mess this up. So start with what feels comfortable enough. That's what I always tell people. Start with what feels comfortable enough, but speak it. Speak it out and then act on it. And so that's something that the high achiever can do. And I believe everybody's a high achiever. When I say high achiever, I know everybody has it. Whether they believe it or not, that's another thing altogether. But if you're listening, one, thank you again. And two, you are a high achiever, every single one of you. Don't let your mind take over. It's for you to take over. You create your dream. You create your reality and stand for it. And you're right. There's a lot of programming going. There's a lot of things that tell us, well, I don't have this and I don't have that and I don't have this. Well, you, my friends, are resources in and of yourself. You have all the resource, you're the resourceful individual that can figure it out. You're here today and you'll be here tomorrow. Focus and be intentional and share your dreams with the world. because the best thing you can get from it is you'll get the people who want to support you, and you're going to get your haters. That's part of the game. Makes it fun, and it builds your leadership muscles.
Absolutely. Yes, when you are, sometimes you need to be controversial. Depends on what you do, right? But sometimes
Yeah.
you need to be so that you actually get your message across. Everybody has this very unique potential. Everybody has the ability to achieve what they want. Sometimes we just don't even know what we want to achieve. And that's where clarity comes in. If that's somebody's case, if you're listening and that's your case, then the first step is to gain greater clarity on what it is that you really, really want deep down in your heart. Thank you so much, Clifford, for inspiring our listeners to take what they've got and do something with it.
Yeah.
Where
Thank you
can
for having
people
me.
connect with you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook, uh, Clifford Starks, Starks. I also have a community on Facebook called the Inner Warrior Community. Would love to have you if you like the energy that I have. And you can also find me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, great. And I'm going to add the links, as always, to the
Awesome.
description once we publish this podcast.
Yeah.
I thank you so much again, Clifford. This has been very inspiring. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing your wisdom.
And
Thank
I want
you.
to say
Yes,
thank you for
please go
having
ahead.
me on. Yeah, Regina, thank you for having me. And anyone who listened, thank you for listening. Much appreciated.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again. Thank you to our listeners. Please know that I so appreciate you all. Make it an awesome rest of your day, and we'll hear each other next time. Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you like this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.